Here are President Biden's debt ceiling options, ranked. In hindsight, President Biden and Democratic leaders in Congress should have tried much harder to abolish the debt limit when they had the chance. Even if they had too few votes to fully scrap it, they could have at least postponed the crisis so it wouldn't hit until after the 2024 election. The United States is on the verge of defaulting. Already, some borrowing costs are spiking, and undemocratic nations are smirking at the dysfunction. The president has no good options left. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, Republican California, is trying to force a choice between default or draconian cuts to education, courts, NASA, transportation and many programs to aid the poor. So far, the few moderate House Republicans are showing little willingness to break ranks. Biden's best option is a deal, but there's not much time before June 1st. The basic framework of a compromise has been apparent for a while: a 2-year freeze on discretionary spending in exchange for lifting the debt limit through the 2024 election. Brian Riedel, a veteran Republican budget expert, predicted as much this month. It's a deal no one will love but most can live with and spin as a political victory. It's also unlikely to send the economy into a recession because the cuts, flat funding is a cut in an era with more than 4% inflation, are meaningful but not massive. There are details to work out. For example, would defense spending be frozen as well? What about additional work requirements on government aid recipients that McCarthy wants? It's telling that the White House has already offered a 1-year freeze and House Republicans rejected it. If the White House puts a 2-year freeze on the table and McCarthy still says, "No way," then Biden needs to telegraph that he's ready to pull an emergency relief valve. Race a realistic ranking of his options, from best to worst. 1. Short-term extension. Return to menu. Congress has enacted many short-term extensions to avoid default. It could do so again, but 5 House Republicans would have to join all Democrats to vote for it. This is not a given. 2. Senate vote or House discharge petition. Return to menu. The Senate has largely left this negotiation up to the White House and House Republicans. But if something close to a 2-year freeze is on the table, the Senate could vote on it to pressure Republicans. House Democrats have also lined up a discharge petition, which allows a bill to be brought to the House floor with 218 signatures. There are 213 House Democrats. If these options fail or appear unlikely, Biden's next best option is to have the Treasury Department do whatever it can to make it until June 15th. That's the magic day that businesses pay their quarterly taxes, which would give the Treasury Department sufficient funding to last most of the summer. 3. Temporarily raid the Social Security Trust funds. Return to menu. These contain $2.8 trillion. The money is not supposed to be used in a debt ceiling crisis, but the nonpartisan Concord Coalition points out it can be tapped during debt limit standoffs to pay Social Security recipients. There's a big Social Security payment due on June 2nd, so this could help a lot. The Concord Coalition also argues that the Treasury Department could use more of these funds by insisting that it can't prioritize some payments over others, and that to pay Social Security recipients on time, it has to pay all government bills. This is a stretch, but it could buy time. 4. The Treasury Department could issue consol bonds. Return to menu. A consol bond is unique in that it has no end date when all the money has to be paid back. The Treasury Department can argue that these bonds don't count against the debt limit because, theoretically, the federal government never has to repay the principal. The catch is that the only reason anyone would buy these bonds is if they paid a high interest rate. It's a costly maneuver, but issuing some of these bonds between June 1st and June 15th seems preferable over alternatives such as a fire sale of U.S. gold. Let's say the Treasury Department is able to get to June 15th but money is running out again by the end of the summer and House Republicans still won't agree to anything remotely in the middle of the road. That's when some of the more outlandish ideas would start to appear reasonable. 5. Invoke the 14th Amendment. Return to menu. Biden could argue that the debt limit is unconstitutional by saying it violates the 14th Amendment, which states, "The validity of the public debt of the United States shall not be questioned." It will almost certainly trigger a legal challenge and call into question whether any U.S. debt issued after that point is valid. Biden has shown a lot of hesitancy to do this, and rightly so. 6. Mint the coin. Return to menu. This is where the U.S. government issues a $1 trillion platinum coin that the Federal Reserve then accepts. The U.S. Mint is allowed to issue platinum coins of any denomination, but, as Treasury Secretary Janet L. Yellen has pointed out, it's a gimmick that investors would probably view as akin to a default. The worst option is default. No one truly knows what will happen if the United States stops paying its bills, but there will be panic and pain. Even getting close to the brink hurts. Back in 2011, Standard & Poor's downgraded the nation's debt rating after the deal was struck and markets kept falling for weeks. This is the other lesson from 2011, striking a deal with harsh spending cuts that last a decade also leads to lasting harm. If House Republicans refuse to budge from their extreme position, there will come a point at which Biden, and the nation, will be better off taking a leap. Here are President Biden's debt ceiling options, ranked. In hindsight, President Biden and Democratic leaders in Congress should have tried much harder to abolish the debt limit when they had the chance. Even if they had too few votes to fully scrap it, they could have at least postponed the crisis so it wouldn't hit until after the 2024 election. The United States is on the verge of defaulting. Already, some borrowing costs are Elon Musk is right about George Soros, and not anti-Semitic. The Hungarian-born billionaire has done more than anyone to turn Americans against Israel. Elon Musk has been accused of anti-Semitism because of his criticism and mockery of George Soros. Mr. Soros is Jewish, Mr. Musk isn't. But Mr. Musk stands falsely accused. Mr. Soros is an active participant in politics, and his Jewishness shouldn't shield him from criticism. Further, no single person has done more to damage Israel's standing in the world, especially among so-called progressives, than George Soros. His financial support has multiplied the influence of the two major organizations that have done the most to shift the left-wing paradigm against Israel. One of them is Human Rights Watch, which was founded by publisher and human rights advocate Robert Bernstein, 1923 to 2019. For years HRW critiqued the denial of human rights by all countries based on two criteria: the seriousness of the violations in any particular nation, and the inability of the nation's citizens to protest and remedy such violations. But in 1993 Kenneth Roth became executive director and turned HRW into an organization that specialized in demonizing Israel. By 2009 the Israel bashing had become so severe that Bernstein wrote, as the founder of Human Rights Watch,